All right, good afternoon, folks. Excuse me. I got a thumbs up from the back of the room. Madam Court Reporter, are you back with us?
I'm here.
All right. Let's see, it looks like we're still waiting for Mr. Rankin.
Just ready to grab some. Not saying you should proceed, I think you should.
You ready to proceed, Mr. Rankin?
Yes.
Yes. See, we had a witness. Now he's off screen. There you are. Okay. Mr. Alleman, I'll just remind you, you're under oath. Are you ready, Ms. Hardy?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay. Let me go back to sharing my screen here. Okay, Mr. Allman, with respect to the notices that were sent to XTO, there are a couple of different addresses, and I wanted to ask you about that. Here we're looking at the Andre Dawson, and that was sent to an address on West Illinois Avenue in Midland. And then when you look at, say, the Sosa notices, those were sent to 200 North Lorraine Street for XTO. Do you know why there are different addresses used for XTO?
Can we take a look? So I see we're on the Sosa right now. That was 2019. Could you go back to the Andre Dawson one, please?
Can you see that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we try to use the best available address, and the first thing that we check on that is the addresses listed on OCD's data for the for that company, and if there are numerous addresses listed for XTO and they've changed over time, so I don't know the exact reason why from one year to the next, why that address was changed on the notices, but they were both from OCD's data. OCD listed addresses.
Okay. And with respect to the wells that are located within the area of review for these applications, let me see if I can get to those. And I don't know if it's shown on there or not, but what I wanted to ask you about is Goodnight's testimony during this case has been that there was an SWD existing in the unit or in the unit acreage prior to approval of the unit. Have you heard that testimony?
Yes, I have.
And do you know what well that was? Can you identify it?
I believe there was I don't recall exactly which well it was, but I believe Rice had a well in the unit.
Okay, so you believe that's a Rice well?
That's my understanding, but that I don't have that document in front of me to confirm the name, API number, or operator.
Okay, and do you recall where generally in the unit that well was located?
I couldn't say right now.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk for a minute about your the new applications of Goodnight for which approval is requested in this case. And I just want to be clear. So there are applications now for new wells that include the Doc Gooden, the Hernandez, the Hodges, the Seaver, and then there's the Piazza well that's on de novo hearing, and then the Andre Dawson injection increase request, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you prepared all of those applications for Goodnight, correct?
Yeah, I manage the preparation of those applications. Yes.
Okay. And all of them are attached to your direct testimony, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified earlier during your summary that Empire was the only party that objected to those applications. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the applications don't propose to inject into any other operator's unitized interval, do they?
No, they don't.
Okay. And we can go through all of the applications, but in the interest of time, I'd rather not do that. But is it correct that, as with the prior applications that we went through, none of the applications that are attached to your direct testimony for the proposed new wells and injection increase include an identification anywhere that the wells would inject into the MSU unitized interval?
I appreciate the efficiency, and we'll try to follow suit there. We would have followed the same general permitting practices on the most recent applications as we did on the previous ones that we went through application by application, where the legal location of the SWD is clearly stated, the injection interval is clearly stated in terms of the depths and the formation and the proposed pool code.
Okay. And so they only, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to try to just get to your next question. So, but yes, they do not specifically state that they are within the EMSU or include the boundary of the EMSU.
And they only identified the SWD pool, correct?
Well, in terms of identified, we proposed that the pool code would be the SWD San Andreas pool code.
Right. Okay. And regarding the Piazza well, let me just get to that order. Sorry, it'll just take me a second here. Trying to do it while I'm not scrolling so I don't make everyone dizzy. Okay. And this is Division Order R22869A, which is attached to your testimony as Exhibit A3. And this is the order that addressed Goodnight's application for the Piazza well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if we look at paragraph 11 of the order, and it's actually ordering paragraph 11, so let me just get there. Your testimony attachments are pretty long, Mr. Allman, so. Don't want to miss it. Okay. So paragraph 11 that I've highlighted here, states that Empire has provided sufficient evidence for continued assessment of the unitized interval for potential recovery of any additional hydrocarbon resources remaining in place. Is that what that paragraph says?
Yes.
And then it goes on to state, approval of the proposed well would contradict the responsibility of the OCD, quote, to prevent the drowning by water of any stratum or part thereof capable of producing oil or gas or both oil and gas in paying quantities, and to prevent the premature and irregular encroachment of water or any other kind of water encroachment that reduces or tends to reduce the total ultimate recovery of crude petroleum, oil or gas, or both oil and gas from any pool. Did I read that correctly?
Word for word. Yes.
Okay. And so based on that determination, the division denied Goodnight's application for authorization to inject into the Piazza well, correct?
Yes, based on that finding, that there was sufficient evidence for continued assessment. Yes, that was the finding that that they were kind of leaning on to deny that application, to give the additional time for assessment.
Well, they just denied the application, right? I mean, that's the outcome of the order.
Yeah, 2.5 years ago, they did deny it to give additional time for assessment.
Okay. And let's talk for a minute about surface use. And when you submit an application for authorization to inject, do you review surface use agreements for the wells?
So that the standard question, that depends. It's going to depend on whether the surface is owned by is fee ownership, state ownership, or federal ownership, and we will review that and discuss that with our client and kind of what that means, because each one has different permitting implications. In the case where there is if it's fee ownership, meaning private, we don't specifically ask to see or review a surface use agreement.
And why not? Why is it different if it's fee?
So the purpose of us providing additional guidance for the state or federal ownership. I apologize as I'm trying to think through this answer here. If it's state or federal ownership, there are different permitting requirements, either having to get easements or right of ways through the state land office, or right of ways or APDs or drill permits from the Bureau of Land Management. If it's fee, then both the injection permit and the drill permit will be submitted to and approved by OCD. So that's really the limit of the guidance or input that we have regarding surface ownership.
Have you reviewed the surface use agreements for each location where Goodnight proposes its wells here or currently operates its wells?
I can't recall ever specifically seeing the surface use agreements.
Did Goodnight represent to you that it has or had valid surface use agreements for the locations of these wells?
I can't point to a specific conversation where they specifically stated that they had that. It might have come up, but I don't recall them specifically making that statement. Whenever we start off the applications, we will start by asking them asking our client, not just Goodnight, anybody, what surface ownership they're looking to permit on. In this case, Goodnight had pretty specific, they did their own geology as we discussed and had pretty specific locations in mind. And we mapped those and noticed that they were on, for the most part, on fee surface, and all of the ones that are at issue in this hearing were on fee surface.
And it sounds like you didn't do anything to independently investigate Goodnight's surface use agreements for the locations of these wells. Is that correct?
Correct. We didn't do anything on the surface use agreements themselves. That's not usually within our purview to review the agreements themselves.
And so you don't know how many acres they cover, correct?
No, I do not specifically know off the top of my head anyways.
And you haven't done any evaluation to determine whether Goodnight's injection fluid has migrated beyond the acreage allotted by the surface use agreements, have you?
Having not known what the what the boundaries of the surface use agreement were, I'd have to say, no, we haven't made that evaluation.
And you haven't made any evaluation whether Goodnight's injection fluid will migrate beyond the acreage allotted by the surface use agreements, or how quickly that will occur, correct?
Mr. Hearing Officer, I'll object to this line of questioning. It's getting into subsurface trespass pore space issues, which is outside the jurisdiction or authorization of the commission and is irrelevant to the scope of the hearing.
What is the relevance?
Mr. Examiner, I think it's relevant because Mr. Allman has represented that the applications meet the requirements for approval, which would imply that they have a legal right to be on the land in the first place. But I don't have many more questions on this topic anyway.
Miss Hardy has indicated she understands that there is a service use agreement authorizing them to be on the location, and that is the extent of what is necessary.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. Mr. Allman, other than these Goodnight wells that you've submitted applications for or that have already been approved by the division, have you ever, to your knowledge, permitted a well or obtained a permit for an SWD that injects into an operator's unitized interval?
No, we have, to my knowledge, I have not personally managed the permitting of any such SWDs that injected into another operator's unitized interval.
Thank you. Those are all of my questions. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. OCD cross-examination of Mr. Alleman.
No questions for this witness, Mr. Hearing Officer.
Rice operating, Mr. Beck.
No questions.
Pilot, Mr. Suazo.
No questions.
All right, then we're to the commission. Mr. Rosatos, let me start with you.
No questions for me. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lampkin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Alleman. Thank you for your testimony. Do you know what would constitute a water incompatibility, if there's a threshold for that?
So the water compatibility is outside of my purview in terms of what I would address. I'm not an expert in water compatibility, so I wouldn't be the one to answer that specific question.
Can you remind me what the why the original Devonian interval was abandoned in the Rhino SWD?
Um, if it so pleases the commission, prefer to pass that to defer to Mr. McGuire on that. I think he would have better, more accurate input, because I was not associated with Goodnight during the Devonian portion of that. We just were asked to do the re-permitting.
Okay. Do you know how or when the SWD San Andres pool was created?
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I don't know when or how it was created. I know that there are numerous numerous SWDs on the Central Basin platform and within the EMSU itself that preceded Goodnight's applications that that were assigned. I guess that's something to clarify, and you're likely familiar with this. The applicant does not. We don't assign a pool name and pool code any more than we assign a, uh, a maximum injection rate. We propose a maximum injection rate, and we propose a pool code and pool ID based on, or pool name and pool code based on other SWDs in the area and the applicability of the pool codes. And in this situation, with the previous saltwater disposal wells having the same SWD San Andres pool code being assigned by OCD and being approved with those pool codes, and including only the San Andres formation, which was the formation that was going to be our injection formation, and that it was specifically an SWD pool code as opposed to an oil pool code. We had zero hesitation that that was the correct pool code. But no, I don't know. I don't know when specifically it was assigned.
Were there any discussions between yourself and the OCD about whether or not the permitted wells were within the bounds of the established SWD pool?
I didn't have any discussions directly with OCD on that topic
Okay.
that I can recall.
And have you heard of any other instances where a pool was vertically contracted for the purposes of injection?
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Well, and an analogous instance to this where the vertical bounds of a pool were the lower end of the vertical bound was increased to accommodate injection in an interval that was previously deemed to be hydrocarbon bearing.
So by injection, do you mean disposal?
Disposal, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. So we have that situation with the as we've discussed with the EMSU and the previously existing saltwater disposal well into this that was permitted to dispose into the San Andres before the formation of the EMSU unit. There's also in the maybe as if I'm understanding your question correctly, and if I get off track, please let me know. But on the North Monument Grayburg San Andres unit, there are SWDs within the boundaries of the North Monument Grayburg St. Andreas unit, and that unit is also a Grayburg St. Andreas unit, similarly set up to the EMSU, and there are disposal wells with the pool code of SWD St. Andreas within the boundaries of that unit that are injecting into the St. Andreas. I don't know that it was I don't know that I think my question on your question was just like, was it, I don't know that there was ever any contraction, like any agreed contraction of the unitized interval, but there were SWDs that are permitted into the formations that are included in that in that unitized interval.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Dr. Ampoma.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. And I'll try to be very efficient with my questions so we can move on quickly. Can we bring up the slides that you went through? And I want to start with slide number 2. Okay. Yeah, and please, if I ask the question and you feel like someone better can respond to that, please feel free to say that. So,
Sure.
So here you're saying that you are applying to obtain permits, for 4 additional injection wells. Now, my first question to you is, why this location?
So I will answer just briefly, but we'll then have to defer. My understanding from discussions with Goodnight is that they deemed the subsurface characteristics, so based on their own research and based on observations of other saltwater disposal wells outside the unit, inside the unit, and their injection performance, they deemed that this was a good spot for saltwater disposal, and that they would be able to inject the volumes that they were needing to inject and stay under their maximum allowable surface injection pressure. But in terms of what specific characteristics they were looking at and what evaluation was done to pick those locations, I would have to defer to Mr. McGuire on that.
So if I ask you, what if these locations were moved away from the unit, and Empire has suggested 2 miles away from their unit, and they will not contest? Has there been any consideration of that? Why not moving away from this particular unit?
Yeah, I think that's gonna fall in the geology analysis and formation suitability. So again, I would have to, instead of trying to get out over my skis on that, I need to defer to Mr. McGuire on what the implications of moving outside the unit as opposed to being inside the unit would be in terms of injection performance.
So you testified to the commission that there are 60 injection permits into the San Andres. And I'm not sure about the boundary that you were characterizing, but I want to ask you, how many of these are in the EMSU?
So I just want very, very small clarification that there have been 60 injection permits approved. As we know, sometimes the permits expire over time, et cetera. but there have been over 60 approved in total. I don't know for sure how many of those are within the EMSU. We have Goodnight's injection permits that are within the EMSU, and I don't recall exactly how many are approved in the EMSU, but I'm aware, or I believe that there are 4 other active permits for San Andreas injection within the EMSU today. But I don't know how many have been approved. Off the top of my head, I don't know how many have been approved in total in history.
Now, so for the ones that you have a fair understanding on, do you know the average injection rate?
No, I don't have. I haven't looked that closely at their at their average injection rates to know, what they are today versus what they've been historically. There are a couple of the wells have. It's been discussed a little bit throughout the hearing that a couple of the wells have have disposed of a fair amount of water over time. I believe it was the EME SWD number 21 that has injected 24 million barrels. And this is all stuff. This is all would be available to double check on the OCD's data. But no, I don't specifically know the injection rates today or how those have changed over time.
So on the same slide, there was a discussion about, let's say, out of the 4, it sounds like State Lands Office objected to 3 of them. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, if we're talking about the Andre Dawson, Ernie Banks, Rhino, and Sosa, yes, that's correct.
Can you share with the commission why?
As my understanding is that, so at the time, from a regulatory perspective, we knew that the State Land Office would object to would protest any applications that were within a half mile of their surface ownership, and these were within a half mile of their surface ownership, and they objected, and we went to hearing. They did appear at hearing and didn't provide any witnesses to provide testimony, but they had an attorney that stated a statement that they stated on all of their all of those similar hearing cases, of which I've been a party to numerous, basically just saying that they objected to the application due to its proximity to state lands. But that's really the extent of my knowledge there of why they objected. But they again, whenever the OCD approved, after the hearing, OCD approved those injection permits, and the State Land Office did not appeal them.
Okay. So if we can go to slide number 4. On slide number 4, you presented a table.
Sorry. Forgot I was sharing.
Yeah, you threw me out there.
It confirmed what I said though, so it was fine.
That's fine. Apologize. I really did not mean to do that. I was just getting it ready. I apologize.
Okay, so slide number 4.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so why did you not include the fracture pressure? Or it's not available at the time?
Why did we not include it in the summary slide?
The potential fracture pressure.
Just as a a general response to that, there's a lot of information that we didn't put in the summary slide just for the sake of brevity and the information. All of this information is all in the testimony, and we were trying to be cognizant of the commission's time here. And on the fracture pressure itself, I don't personally know what the fracture pressure is. That'd be a question for Mr. I hate to put everything on Mr. McGuire's shoulders, but being inside Goodnight, he would be more likely to be able to answer that question appropriately.
Now with that, I just want to understand your role when it comes to more or less putting these applications together. Can you summarize that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. In a general sense, for all of our clients that we work with and advise and prepare saltwater disposal applications, we help advise on the locations. Usually they have a location in mind, and we let them know if there are any what we call fatal flaws that would cause them to need to be moved, and then we move along with review having with Goodnight having the geology evaluated and picking injection intervals and such. But with Goodnight, that information was done in-house with Goodnight and was provided to us. And we took that information and completed the AOR evaluations, the associated maps that come along with the applications, and we adjust our permitting procedure over time, in accordance with what we see other operators doing, and in accordance with what OCD seems to prefer. So in this case, like in terms of picking the maximum rates and the maximum pressures, the maximum pressures are at the OCD's default of 0.2 psi per foot, and based on the injection performance of not only Goodnights but other SWDs in the area, we did not see that being an issue to be able to achieve the rates that they were wanting to inject at and staying under those permitted pressures. And so we do advise on even items that our clients send over. We will advise if we see anything that kind of sticks out. Yeah, I can keep going,
Yeah.
but if that answers your question.
So do you review the materials for completeness, and then also do you fill out the C108 and all the forms that comes with the application?
Generally we will fill out, so we'll complete. So like, let's just, because it's easy. If we take the example with Goodnight, they do their geology work, and we let them know what it is that we need, that is required by OCD, both either in regulations in the C108 or what we know that OCD wants to see, and make sure that the information is prepared, and in a manner and is complete with the information that OCD is going to want to see. So we do check it for completeness. Unless we're specifically asked on a technical side, we don't necessarily go over the geology or do an independent analysis of the technical items that they point out. But if something sticks out like a sore thumb, we'll let them know. And then usually we also sign the so send out the affected party notices, do the public notice, and sign the C-108 form itself and the associated checklist. And sometimes the operator wants to sign that, even if we completed a lot of the components. So it's really kind of dependent upon the specific project.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Mr. Rankin asks you if there is any changes that you want to more or less change in your testimony. So I presume that these applications that has been submitted to the commission is final.
Yes, I don't know of any changes that we would, even after hearing being a part of the proceedings here. I don't see anything that we would want to change with the application, but if Goodnight came up with something that they wanted to change, we would consider it, but that hasn't been discussed.
Okay, thank you for that. So there are two things. I'm going to go through one of the applications, for the new request. And then also I'll go to one of the applications that has been approved, and there was an order that was attached to that. So we can have some clarity on some of the things that I really want to discuss. So there are some few questions that I will ask you. So I'm looking at one of the C-108, and this one will be the Doc Golden SWD well permit. The Golden SWD well permit. So if we can bring up the C-108, that would be wonderful. And I think that would be probably page 45 of the 323 of your testimony.
Dr. Impoma, which page was that?
45?
45?
Yes.
This page?
Let's go to B. So that should be up also. Yeah, right there. No, go down.
Okay.
Where's page 45B? Yeah, right here. Okay. So I'm looking at the B. Now, so at B, number 5, it reads, give the depth to and the name of the higher and next lower oil and gas zone in the area of the well, if any. Did I read that correctly, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
So then let's go down to 46, page 46. Thank you, right there. So let's look at number 5, your response to that. So you're saying that below are the approximate formation tops for known oil and gas producing zones in the area. Now, when I read that up, is it your understanding that maybe OCD is referring to existing producing, actual producing zones?
So that there's a number of things in the in the C-108 that are subject to interpretation. So in that case, we do believe that they are looking for current current production. And so in some cases, if there have, again, it's situationally dependent. In some cases, if there has been a lot of production from a specific zone, but maybe there's very little production within the region currently, we might go ahead and include that just to be conservative. We might go ahead and include that formation in this listing, but it is our general understanding that they're wanting to know, as of the time of the application, what are the productive formations above and below your injection interval.
So as you said, it's subject to interpretation. So if I take it and I ask you, Goodnight's experts are saying that there is a potential ROZ in the San Andres. They've divided the San Andres into upper and lower. So based on their testimony and based on their well log analysis, they are saying that there is a potential ROZ in the upper San Andres. So I'm asking you, do you believe that you've provided an accurate response to question number 5?
Yeah, can we go back up to B5 in the C108 form itself? Okay, yeah. So it says next higher and next lower oil or gas zone in the area of the well. Okay, if we go back down, sorry to make you keep scrolling, B5. And so we look at whenever, so in this case, with Goodnight, Goodnight provided us the depths of the depth of the top of the Grayberg, but in terms of OCD's records, that was the next producing zone. The next higher producing formation was the Grayberg, as a part of B5. To fulfill that requirement, we don't necessarily go in and do a full log analysis on every single formation to see if it might potentially at some point in the future through some method produce. But we do look at current production to see what those zones are. And this information is in our notices that get sent out to the affected parties. And so if the affected parties have an issue with that, which is why we're here today with the Doc Gooden, that the one of the affected parties, in this case being Empire, effectively disagreed with that finding, although they didn't state that specifically with B5. But yeah, it's our understanding that that OCD is wanting to know what the producing formations are currently that are known.
So based on all the testimony that we've listened throughout multiple weeks, if the commission finds that there is oil in the San Andres, does that mean that this information that has been provided to the commission is not accurate or fully accurate?
No, I don't think it changes the accuracy of this information. We very specifically state that these are oil and gas producing zones, not potential producing zones. But I think OCD gets tired of hearing from me, because I ask questions all the time. So like in this situation, I would be inclined to gather OCD's input on this situation for the application. Like how would you like us to address this, especially if we were to do additional applications in similar situations, but based on since this, so I'm not an engineer or geologist, but I've been listening to most of the testimony, and it doesn't sound like there's production from that ROZ currently. And so as long as that's still the case, I think we would still probably leave it here, leave the data as it is. But the injection the injection interval depths are clearly stated, and if an applicant, or sorry, if an affected party has a question about that or doesn't agree with us, then again they get provided this information. OCD gets provided this information, and the affected party can protest if they want to, or OCD can ask us to revise the application if they think that we should add additional information. That's totally within their purview.
Yeah, that is good to know too. Thank you. Mr. Rankin, can we go to 44, page 44? Under VII. Under VII. So the second point, you have to provide attached data on the proposed operation, including whether the system is closed or whether the system is open or closed. So did I read that correctly, sir?
Yes.
So when we go down to page 46, page 47, yeah, 47.
Where is that?
47.
Oh, sorry.
Right there. So under VII, proposed operation, you are saying that a closed system will be used. Did you listen to most of the testimonies, Empire experts, and then Mr. Knight and Dr. Davidson? Did you listen to their, and even Mr. Macbeth, did you listen to their testimony?
I did.
They are telling the commission that the San Andreas is more like open system. They don't know the boundaries of the San Andreas. So are you still standing by your assertion that a closed system is used for this application?
I do. I understand where you're. I do understand the question that you're asking. This is another one of those. I would say that there's a fair amount of interpretation on what closed system means. Like whenever we start an application for a client, we ask them whether it will be open or closed. There's been a lot of discussion on what that specifically means. Some interpretations are, is it like closed loop drilling? Some interpretations are, is it a closed system in terms of the generation of the produced water and the disposal? So there's been some interpretation. When I say interpretation, I mean just discussion, not hearing findings and such. But there's been some interpretation that a closed system relates to would be related to a non-commercial disposal system, where you're taking water from your own leases and injecting it into a disposal formation. And so I'm not trying to obfuscate or make this difficult. That's just another one of the points of the C108 that is I haven't seen it clearly defined. I will say that I can't specifically say that there aren't any C108s out there that state that that they will use an open system, but I will say that a majority of the applications state that it's a closed system, and it's almost just, it seems like it's kind of become convention to state that. Before you said it, before you made that statement, I haven't heard it interpreted as like a closed, open or closed subsurface system. But that would be another interpretation that I think we should try to get some clarity from OCD on, just to make sure that we're using the right the right terminology and option going forward.
Yeah, so certainly I'm an engineer. And I specifically asked about this question. What is the boundary condition that you are using in your analysis? And they keep on talking about how it is more or less like an ocean. There's no boundary to it. You know, so I will ask OCD, and if OCD really confirms that it is a subsurface system that we're talking about, then the commission will see how to more or less look into that.
Yes.
I appreciate that, though.
I look forward to hearing the outcome of that discussion, so that we can have clarity on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, let me ask you, so you put the application together, right? So that is why I'm asking you these questions. And if you feel like someone else can respond to it, yeah, please do so. Now, why do you believe OCD is asking about, or the form is asking about the source of the water, and then also the formation water where the injection is going to happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And for that, can we scroll back up? So it's going to be section 7.5, 4 and 5. So 7.
Yeah, right at number
4 and
4.
5. Mm-hmm. And so just reading, starting with number 4, it says sources and an appropriate analysis of injection fluid and compatibility with the receiving formation, if other than re-injected produced water. So one of the issues, well, again, the interpretation and clarity on exactly what that means is up to some amount of interpretation. They say re-injected produced water, but it doesn't really specify what re-injected means. Re-injected from the same formation, re-injected from a different formation. But what our understanding of what they're going for on number 4 is they're trying, that number 4 is for was put in there. Again, this is our interpretation. I'm not speaking for OCD, but our interpretation is that number 4 was put in there for enhanced oil recovery projects. So if you read it in with the mindset of enhanced oil recovery, it says sources and appropriate analysis of injection fluid and compatibility with the receiving formation, if other than re-injected produced water. So I think what they're getting at there is, if you have an EOR project and you know your water, you've got water supply coming from somewhere, and you're injecting that into the receiving formation, if that produced water didn't come from the receiving formation, they're wanting to know what the analysis is. They're wanting water quality analysis of the water if it didn't come from that same formation. In other words, you're bringing outside water into this into this productive depths, productive interval. And so, OCD is tasked with the ensuring the no waste of hydrocarbons and making sure to protect the production. And so that's whenever you think of it, at least I guess I would leave that to you if you have further questions or thoughts on that. But that's been our understanding, is that number 4 is specifically asking for appropriate analysis of injection fluid if you're injecting water that didn't come from that same formation in an EOR project. Now we go ahead and we do provide the injection fluid. We include analyses of the injection fluid, even though we don't really think this was the impetus for this number 7.4. Whenever we're injecting for disposal, we don't believe that number 4 is really applicable to, or even the OCD put it in there to be applicable to our disposal operations. However, just as a matter of convention and industry standard, pretty much I haven't seen an application that doesn't have analysis of the injection fluid. So like if it came from the Wolfcamp or the Bone Spring in the Delaware Basin, then they're going to include a analysis of that water, even though we don't believe that's actually really what OCD is wanting. But on OCD's check boxes, they have internal checklists for the applications, and there's a checkbox for it, and we like all of those boxes to be checked on the green side, which means that you have it, and so that's why we go ahead and provide it. And then number 5, if just reading it directly, if injection is for disposal purposes into a zone not productive of oil or gas at or within 1 mile of the proposed well, attach a chemical analysis of the disposal zone formation water. May be measured or inferred from existing literature, studies, nearby wells, etc. So in this case, we believe number 5 is applicable to like commercial injection for disposal, where they're wanting to make sure that the zone that you're injecting into is that the water quality is not so high that it would qualify as a USDW, and so we do provide that. We provide that chemical analysis as well.
So, sir, from my engineering point of view, when we say compatibility, I look at it differently, right? And OCD is going to help us to more or less understand that. Now, just to finish off on that, can we go to attachment number 4 and then attachment number 5? Let's start with number 4. Should be way down. Number 4.
On which application, Dr.
Or
Ampoma?
the same document that we look at. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
If I can get to the right. Dr. Ampoma, which attachment is attachment 4?
It's going to be the water analysis for
Okay.
the San Andres, and then also that for the.
Okay. This is the source water analysis?
Yes, sir.
Is this the one you want?
Yeah, so let's go
Okay.
to 3. Let's check that. Okay, thank you. So here, so I'm showing you the TDS. Can you identify the TDS tab column?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just pay attention to the numbers that we're seeing, and then also the chloride content, the bicarbonate content, and then the sulfate content. Now, when I talk of, when I look at this, my understanding as an engineer is when we say compatibility, my understanding is how the water that is coming in comparable to what is there. So let's go to the other one. So this one is the source. Let's go to the San Andres. Right there. So can you also identify the TDS, the chloride, the bicarbonate, and then the sulfate content on this table?
Yes.
does it look compatible to you? Or how, listen, when you have these two data sets, what analysis do you do in terms of making some conclusions between these two data sets?
So that's where on the compatibility analysis, that's where I'd have to turn to our other experts. I believe Tom Tomastic is going to discuss the chemistry and compatibility.
Okay, I appreciate that. So we've gone through the actual applications, and I've really tried to understand that if all this information that has been provided to the commission is complete and accurate to the best of your knowledge. So let's go to page 302 of the same document. So this document is the authorization to inject.
Correct.
Give me a second. So I'm looking at A. So if we can go to 303, yeah. Right there. Let me probably do. Give me a second. Okay, so I will wrap it up quickly. So let's go to H instead. H. Yeah. On 311.
Okay.
311. So, I've gone through multiple information with you with regards to the permit. Now, under section 3 here, OCD authority to modify permit and issues orders. So I just want to reiterate some of the items. So under A, the first one, the permit. So A, the OCD may amend, suspend, or revoke this permit after notice and an opportunity for hearing if it determines that the first one, the permit contains a material mistake. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
So do you believe that the OCC, if we find out that there are some material mistakes that was presented in the application, this permit could be revoked?
I wouldn't. I think it'd be pretty presumptuous of me to know what you guys what the commission is allowed to do. I don't know specifically, but if the commission did identify a material mistake that you felt, again, materially changed the application, changed the proposed operation, then, and again, this is where I don't know for sure if OCD would have to agree with you or if they would just change it if that's what the commission requested. But if there were a material mistake that significantly revised the proposed operation, then that authority is certainly there for OCD to amend the permit.
So you submitted the application, so that is why I'm asking you these questions. Now, the second one, permittee made an incorrect statement on which OCD relied to establish a term or conditions of the permit or grant this permit. And let me read the other ones and you can just respond to all of them. Injected fluid is escaping from the approved injection interval. And the reason why I'm picking on that point is that, based on all the testimony that we've listened here throughout the whole weeks, Goodnight's expert is saying that this is an open system. It's not a closed system. Now, on your application, you identified is a closed system, subject to interpretation from OCD. Now, we talked about if it is an open system, where is that fluid that you are injecting? Where is it going? Or even the native fluid, where is it going? If it is a closed system, I don't think there is any argument here. But experts are saying it's open system. So we really, really need to know where that injected fluid is going. And then I'll do the VI. Injection may cause or contribute to the waste of oil, gas, or potash resources, or affect correlative rights, public health, and/or environment. And I do have the C. So with all of this that I've described here, do you believe you signed on this application and submitted to OCD? So if any of these items apply, or if any of these items, commission finds this, do you believe the commission will be in a position to revoke the existing permits?
Again, I have to plead ignorance on the commission's authorities there, but certainly, as it states here, OCD does have the authority, if to modify or suspend or revoke, as it says, if those items are confirmed, that there's a material mistake that significantly changes the operation, if there was a material incorrect statement that OCD relied upon, and if it was confirmed that injection fluid was escaping the approved injection interval, I would agree there that OCD does have that authority to amend, suspend, or revoke, just as the permit says.
I'll end here, and thanks so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
How's that for a hot seat, Mr. Alleman?
Mr. Hearing Officer, can I ask 4 questions before you take a break?
Yeah, actually, and well, sure. I don't know how long you're going to go. I'm hoping we can also get redirect out of the way before we take a break, but go for it.
4 questions. Sir, when did you first learn that there could be conflict between the 2 parties?
Just a point of clarity. Who's speaking?
Yeah, this is Zach Chandler, New Mexico Department of Justice Commission Counsel.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you there. When did I first learn that there was conflict between the 2 parties? Did I understand that correctly?
When there could be conflict.
The conflict is difficult to specify, but being the submitter of the application, we were notified of Empire's protests, and I don't know if that qualifies as conflict or not. Usually at that point we turn for Goodnight, we let Goodnight know of the protests, and that they handle them from there. We're not further involved in resolving it. So I don't know what those subsequent discussions were like between Goodnight and Empire, nor do I know when kind of the term conflict would have been the appropriate characterization.
When did you first learn of the unionization order?
I couldn't specifically put a particular date to it, but going into as we were submitting the applications, we were aware that there was that the applications were going to be within a unitized interval.
So there's lots of applications. Be precise. Which applications?
I would have to, so I'm trying to think of which was the first SWD application that we submitted that was within the interval, or sorry, within the EMSU boundary. I don't recall right off if that was the SOSA or the Rhino. I'm sure I'm sure that Mr. McGuire would have a better, being involved in that on a day-to-day basis, he would probably have a better understanding of which one was first.
Okay. What did you do once you were aware of the unitization order?
So we had the discussions with Goodnight, and those discussions simply revolved around reviewing the unit agreement, the unit operating agreements, and then checking to make sure that there wasn't production, as it said, within a mile. Looking at potential productive wells, or looking at wells out within that mile to see where are there or are there productive wells in our injection interval in that area. And that was our doing the production review was the next step, just to make sure that we weren't going to be injecting into a zone that was currently producing.
Fourth and final question. I interpreted Ms. Hardy's questions to you to be that the unitization order is the smoking gun, and once good faith discovery of it, that was a game changer. How should the commission view the discovery by the parties of the unitization order?
In terms of the, I think I'm stumbling a little bit over the term, the discovery of the unitization order. We identified it or Goodnight had identified it as they were picking their locations, and then we discussed it, and in looking at the geology, Goodnight preparing the geology. Goodnight had determined that there wouldn't be that the barrier existed, that the injection into the injection interval would not affect the production within the unit. And again, that's obviously been discussed to the nth degree, but Mr. McGuire can certainly expound on that, as he would have been involved in those discussions and the geologic findings in that analysis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chandler. Give us an idea, if you can, Mr. Rankin, how much redirect do you think you have?
My intention is to be very efficient, but I do need to put together some documents. I think now would be a good time for me to do it during a break. But I think I probably, would be within 10 to 15 minutes or so. I'm going to try to be very efficient. But I do need, and I would be more efficient if I can just have 10 minutes to pull together the documents I need.
Well, we come back at 10 minutes till 3. That will give you 15 minutes. All right. I was gonna say, you guys get back early. We'll have to take shorter breaks. Madam Court Reporter, are we back on the record?
I'm here.
Okay, Chairman Rosatos, are you back?
I sure am.
Okay, great. All right. Ready to go, Mr. Rankin?
1 minute. Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. I'm ready to resume. Mr. Allman, are you there?
I am.
Do you recall cross-examination from Ms. Hardy regarding the nomenclature order R7767 addressing the change in the pool to the EMSU unit?
I do.
Do you recall that she pointed you to paragraph number 4 of that order R7767 that she read to you stating that the proposed amendment of the pool vertical limits is necessary to permit the applicant to successfully carry out secondary recovery operations within the full oil column underlying said unit?
Yes.
Mr. Allman, she did not read to you the paragraph immediately preceding that in the order, did she?
No, she did not.
I'm sorry. Let me share that screen. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen now. Mr. Allman, I apologize for not having done that before. So looking at paragraph 4, is that the paragraph I just read back to you?
Yes.
And she did not show you or read back to you the contents of the preceding paragraph number 3, did she?
That's correct.
And that paragraph reads, the applicant seeks the upward extension of the vertical limits of the Eunice Monument Pool to include either the top of the Grayburg Formation or to a subsea datum of minus 100 feet, whichever is higher, and the concomitant amendment of the vertical limits of the Umont gas pool by contracting its lower limits to either the base of the Queen Formation or to a subsea datum of minus 100 feet, whichever is higher, underlying said unit. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Are you aware that the purpose of the change of the vertical limits of the pool upwards was to enable the operator, Gulf in this case, to efficiently and effectively water flood the entire water column up into the Penrose?
Yes.
At the bottom of, let's see, at the bottom of this order, Mr. Allman, are you familiar with this language? Is this a common provision in all commission and division cases, paragraph 4 of the order?
Yes, certainly some version of that.
And is your understanding that essentially means that the commission or division, depending on who issued the order, always retains jurisdiction to modify, amend, revoke, or change orders depending on changed circumstances. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's your understanding.
Yes.
Okay. Now, on the Andre Dawson, Ms. Hardy asked you questions about the pool code that you obtained and used, identified in this application. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Okay. And she also asked you questions about whether you recall specifically the names of wells or locations of wells that pre-existed the applications filed by Goodnight. Any of the applications at issue in this case. Do you recall that?
I checked. I don't think that that's what I had asked. But
Um,
so I think
all right.
it's misleading.
Maybe rephrase the question, Mr. Rankin.
Okay, Mr. Allman, do you recall questions asking you about wells that predated in the EMSU unit predated Goodnight's wells that were filed with the division?
I do, and I recall not being able to precisely say the dates or the specific locations.
Okay, now I've got this map. It's Goodnight Exhibit B 47. Are you able to identify by looking at this map which of the wells you recall were approved for disposal within the EMSU and the San Andres prior to Goodnight filing any of its applications? You can direct me to them by sections,
Right.
or if you
Um,
need to see the names, I can show you the legend too.
Yeah, as I said, the names would be helpful.
Okay.
Mr. Rankin, I'm sorry, is this an exhibit?
This is an Exhibit B 47 of Goodnight's.
Thanks.
You mentioned the EME 21 well.
Right. So so if we can zoom back in just a little bit, I believe in section 14, that one is currently operated by Permian Line Service.
And is your understanding that permit was filed and approved prior to Goodnight filing any of its applications?
Yes, that was my understanding. I would, yeah.
And then do you recall any other wells that had pre-existing approvals prior to Goodnight filing its applications with the commission or division rather?
I believe the well in section 22.
Okay. And that, just as a refresher, that's a well operated by OWL, SWD Operating, is that correct?
Correct.
Any other wells that you can recall pre-existed Goodnight's applications? Or the permits or approvals pre-existed Goodnight's applications?
In section 4, I believe the pink triangle is that would be the EMSU #1 that is operated by Empire.
Okay.
My understanding. And then I don't recall the name of it, but in section 21, the southwest corner.
Okay. And that was a well, I believe,
Thought that
it's
was
it's identified here as Permian Line Surface. Is that the well you're referring to?
yes, I believe yes.
And in your response to Dr. Ampomi, you said you understood there were 4 wells within the EMSU, and those are the 4 wells you were thinking about?
Those are the ones I was had in mind.
And each of those 4 wells had permits approved for disposal prior to Goodnight's filing its applications, correct?
Correct.
And do each of those 4 wells have an identification for the injection formation in the division's public database?
Yes.
And what is that?
The identified formation is San Andres.
And what's the pool the injection formation pool identified?
SWD semicolon San Andres.
Okay. And the basis for that, basis for Goodnight identifying the pool in its applications, was it related to the assignment of those pools by the division?
Certainly that, wait, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is it your understanding that Goodnight's assignment of the selection of the pool code in its applications was based on OCD's assignment of the pool code for those approved permit applications?
Yes, that was certainly weighed heavily along with just the comparison of the formations and similarities of the injection intervals.
And just to be clear, each of those four were approved for injection into the San Andres within the exterior boundaries of the unit, correct?
Correct.
And did you look at the applications for the one that we identified as the owl well and the Permian line service well?
I've looked at them. I've looked at them briefly.
Did they, in their applications, identify the same pool code that Goodnight identified? Or do you recall? If you don't recall, that's fine.
I can't recall specifically. There was I don't remember which one it was. I think it was. I remember sticking out to me that the P15. I don't recall seeing a pool code in the application itself, which made me think. And again, this is recollection, which made me think that OCD was the one that assigned it after whenever they issued the order. But I don't specifically recall seeing it in the application.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add on to that just very briefly, in OCD's records, it is listed that's what OCD listed as being the pool is SWD San Andres.
Okay. Mr. Allman, you recall being asked about whether you identified the unit, specifically the EMSU, in the application that was filed with the division?
Yes.
And are you aware of any regulation or rule, guidance, or requirement to do so?
No, I'm not.
In fact, is there any rule or requirement to identify if a SWD is being proposed for within a producing well spacing unit or communitized area, exploratory unit, or any other producing area?
I'm not aware of any such rule.
And when you're giving notice of such applications, of SWD applications, are you required under the guidance in the C-108 to identify anything other than the location of the well and the injection formation?
In terms of identifying its proximity to a unitized interval, no, you're not required to state that.
Under the division's regulations for applications for administrative applications for SWDs for injection, what's your understanding of the requirement for notification?
For administrative approval, we notify the surface owner, operators of wells within 1/2 mile, if there's an operator of a unit within your 1/2 mile area of review, you notify them. If BLM or the state land office is a mineral owner within your area of review, they get notification. In the lack of if there's, I apologize, I'm going by memory here, not reading through them sequentially. If there's not a leaseholder, so you notify leasehold operators within 1/2 mile. If there's not a leasehold operator for a particular tract, then you would notify the mineral owner.
And I've got up here on the screen, Rule 1915-26. I'm going to point you to B2. Are you familiar with this rule generally for administrative applications of injection wells?
Yes.
And I'm going to read it to you. The applicant shall furnish by certified or registered mail a copy of the application to each owner of the land surface on which each injection or disposal well is to be located, and to each leasehold operator and other affected persons, as defined in subsection A of 1915-27 NMAC, with any tract wholly or partially contained within 1/2 mile of the well. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
And based on that language where it says the applicant shall furnish, is it your understanding that proof of receipt is required?
There's nothing that states that proof of receipt is required.
And so when you file these applications on behalf of Goodnight, you furnished proof that notification was provided by certified or registered mail, correct?
Correct.
Now, in the same section of the code, for administrative approvals, I'm going to read subpart C2. The division shall not approve an application for administrative approval until 15 days following the division's receipt of Form CO-108, complete with all attachments, including mailing as required. It goes on to discuss that. It goes on to say, if the division does not receive an objection within the 15-day period, and a hearing is not otherwise required, the division may approve the application administratively. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
So is it your understanding that if an objection is not raised within that 15 days, that objection is waived or potentially waived?
Yes, at that point, it would be available for administrative review and approval. The application would be.
Now, if an objection to administrative application is received by the division, I'm going to read the next portion of this rule. It says under subpart D, hearings. If a written objection to an application for administrative approval of an injection well is filed within 15 days after receipt of a complete application, if 1915-26-8 NMAC requires a hearing, or if the director deems a hearing advisable, the division shall set the application for hearing and give notice of the hearing. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Is it your understanding then, based on this requirement of the rule, that if an administrative application is protested, that the applicant is not required to give notice of the hearing?
I object to this question. It's misleading and it inaccurately states OCD's regulations that we've already gone through, specifically the adjudication rule. And I also showed that Goodnight did provide notice to some parties and not others.
I'm getting there.
So I object, it's misleading.
Well, it also calls for this witness to offer legal conclusions. I mean, you're asking him to provide opinions on the application of a regulation. So, other people have gotten away with that so far with this witness, but I'll let you have this one question, but let's not go there.
Fine, I understand. Mr. Allman, you do this on behalf of, you manage these on behalf of clients, correct? These applications, right?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the way the division manages administrative applications and objections, is that correct?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that based on this rule, it provides that the division is to give notice of hearings for objections, is that correct?
Yes.
Same objection.
I mean,
Overruled. He said it's his understanding.
okay. So now, Mr. Allman, I want to ask you another set of questions based on, nevertheless, it's convention when a objection is raised for administrative hearing that the applicant will, in order to get on the division's docket, file an application for hearing and provide notice of the application to the objector. Is that your understanding?
objection
that's-
to the extent I think it calls for speculation on what the division does generally and what other applicants do. I think he can only testify about what he has done.
Overruled.
You can answer the question, Mr. Allman.
Could you please restate the question? Sorry.
Sure. Based on your understanding of the division's approach managing objections to administrative applications, in order to get on the division docket, in order to be on the docket for a hearing, is your understanding then that the applicant of a contested administrative application will file an application with the division for hearing and give notice to the objector?
Yes, that is my understanding.
And
Based
Mr.
on,
Allman, go ahead.
let's say, based on the experience we've had with a lot of applications that went to hearing.
And that would be not just Goodnight's applications, correct?
That's correct.
And when you're giving notice of application, when you're doing a C-108 application, preparing it and putting together the area of review maps that identify tracks around the proposed injection, is there any requirement in the C-108 to identify anything other than the lease lines?
For the line item that requests the you have to show leaseholders out, leasehold operators out to 2 miles, which would include the lines of the lease.
And that's under Big V, is that right? Part 5? In other words, if I'm looking at the C-108, the requirement is to attach a map that identifies all wells and leases within 2 miles of any proposed injection well within 1/2 mile radius circle drawn around each proposed injection well. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't specify that you have to identify producing well units, communitization areas, statutory units, or exploratory units.
That's correct. It does not.
Have you ever known the division to require that?
I have not seen that be required either in our applications or others.
Do you recall Dr. Mpoma asking you if you recall the basis for the State Land Office's objection to the prior applications within the EMSU by Goodnight?
I do.
And do you recall that you recall that it was based on the fact that they were a surface owner?
Yes, I stated that was my understanding, was that it was based on their surface ownership and its proximity to the SWD.
Okay. I've got here what's from the division records. It's case number 21569. It's the pre-hearing statement that was filed by the State Land Office in the Andre Dawson case. And I'll just scroll down and I'll point out here and I'll read to you the basis for the State Land Office's concerns under their statement of the case. States, quote, application of Goodnight Midstream Permian LLC for approval of a saltwater disposal well in Lee County, New Mexico, period. The proposed well is located less than 250 feet from New Mexico State Trust lands and minerals. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
And then under the basis for their opposition, it goes on to say, the State Land Office, and I'm reading from the document, is concerned with the proximity of the proposed well site to state trust lands and minerals and the potential negative impact on weight and waste. Let me rephrase that. And the potential negative impact on and waste of New Mexico State Trust minerals. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And after the application was approved, did the State Land Office challenge this for hearing at the commission?
Sorry, can you clarify that question?
After the order for the Andre Dawson was approved, did the State Land Office challenge that approval with the commission?
No, they did not.
To your knowledge, Mr. Allman, had the State Land Office previously challenged previous orders before the commission?
No, not to my knowledge.
You don't recall them filing de novo applications for any other applications that Goodnight had filed?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you recall, well, let's see. Do you recall Dr. Ampoma was asking you about water chemistries in the application that you prepared for the Doc Gooden, I believe it was?
Yes.
And I'm showing you on the screen here, this is the attachment for, let me go back up to attachment 3, which is the source water analysis. Do you recall reviewing this with Dr. Ampoma?
Yes.
Now, for clarification of the record, will you explain whether these wells and these fluids are actually the wells and fluids that were going to be handled for disposal under this application?
No, these would not necessarily be the specific wells and fluids. They're representative of the representative samples, produced water samples from the formations that we would expect that the produced water would come from. This was pulled from the this data was obtained from the GoTech website maintained by I believe it's New Mexico Tech, and was not specific to individual wells that would necessarily be supplying water to Goodnight's SWDs.
And now, is it your understanding, Mr. Allman, based on your work with Goodnight, that Goodnight actually treats its water prior to disposal?
Yes.
And Mr. McGuire can address that treatment?
Yes.
Okay. You remember Mr. Chandler asking you about at what point you learned of Empire first having let me not misstate his question. When you first learned that there was a potential conflict between the parties, do you recall that question?
I do.
And you were not sure. You stated that as I recall, you stated that you became aware of it when Empire filed an objection to Goodnight's applications.
Objection misstates the testimony.
He can correct me.
I don't remember the specific question. You understand the question, Mr. Alleman?
I do.
All right. Overruled.
Do you
Yes,
recall? Go ahead.
Yeah, the first time that I became aware that there was a conflict between Empire and Goodnight. Again, the term conflict could be discussed, but was whenever we received the notice of protest from Empire.
And I'm showing here on Empire letterhead a letter dated September 21st, 2021. Do you see that?
I do.
It's addressed to Mr. Philip Getz at the OCD. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it states notice of objection and protest. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it's specific to the Piazza SWD number 1 well, correct?
That's correct.
And it goes on to state in the address the basis for Empire Petroleum Corporation's objection to the application. Do you recall seeing this letter before?
Yes.
Okay. And it's signed by Joshua Cornell, who's Vice President of Land and Business Development at Empire, New Mexico. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And it goes on to carbon copy Mr. Thomas Pritchard, Mr. Michael Morissette, Mr. Brian Wetherill, and Mr. Eugene Sweeney. Do you see that?
I do.
You don't know who those people are, do you?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. But that was the first time you became aware on that date, or when you received that letter, that Empire had an objection to Goodnight's proposed injection. Is that right?
Yeah, as I think I stated in my response previously, I wasn't sure of the exact date, but if that was if that was their first protest, then that would be the first date that I became aware of it.
Now, Mr. Chandler also asked you about when you first became aware of, or Goodnight first became aware of the existence of the statutory unit, the EMSU. Do you recall that question?
I do.
And then he asked you, and I'm going to mangle the question, but he asked you about whether that was a concern about whether additional wells should be authorized or whether Goodnight should have been aware of the existence. Do you kind of recall that discussion with Mr. Chandler?
I do.
Now, you also discussed with Ms. Hardy, this order I've got in front of you here is order R7765, which is the unitization order creating the EMSU. Do you recall that?
I do.
And you told me that you told Ms. Hardy that you were generally aware of that order, correct?
That's correct.
Now, I know you probably haven't studied this, but are you aware of any provision in that order that would have terminated the authorization for any existing SWD, commercial SWDs that were prior existing in injecting into the San Andres at the time this order was issued?
I do not recall reading that in the order.
Do you recall any language in the order precluding additional commercial SWDs within the San Andres portion of the unitized interval?
No, I do not.
In fact, subsequent to issuance of this order, the division had approved at least 4 other SWDs after this order was issued, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And just one other point I want to make sure I understand and the record is clear on. When you had this discussion with Dr. Ampoma, and I recognize we will need the division to weigh in on this, but just based on the language of the requirements under the C-108, under subpart Roman numeral 7, under number 5, it states, quote, if injection is for disposal purposes, I'll stop there. Each of the applications that Goodnight was filing here within the EMSU were for disposal purposes, correct?
Correct.
And it goes on to state, into a zone not productive of oil or gas at or within 1 mile of the proposed well. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And Mr. Allman, based on everything you reviewed, did you identify any wells within 1 mile of the proposed injection wells that were productive of oil or gas within the San Andres?
No, we did not.
So based on your understanding, this part 5 was applicable to each of the applications that Goodnight filed. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I would like to make sure that I have requested administrative notice of the State Land Office's pre-hearing statement in case number 21569 to correspond with the administrative notice taken of the other elements of that application or that case before the division.
Any objection from Empire, Ms. Hardy?
No objection.
OCD,
No objection.
Rice,
No objection.
Pilot? All right.
No objection.
Yes, so the commission will take administrative notice.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I'm not entirely sure if it's part of the record. I'm going to ask that the commission take administrative notice of each of the orders that govern operation of the EMSU. That would be order number R7765, R7766, and R7767, and any applicable amendments to the EMSU.
Objection from Empire.
No objection, but I believe those are attached to Mr. Wheeler's testimony.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they all are, but I just want to make sure that it's part of the record.
Okay, thank you. OCD and
No objection.
Rice,
No objection.
Pilot.
No objection.
All right, they will be administratively noticed.
No further questions, Mr. Hearing Officer.
Okay, Empire, may this witness be excused.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Mr. Alleman, thank you for your time. And you're free to go or stay. Mr. Rankin, who is your next witness?
Mr. Hearing Officer, next witness will be Dr. Lake.
Okay. All right. I see somebody standing up in the back, so I assume he's appearing in person.
If I wonder if I may just take 5 minutes to get my documents in order, and maybe that might help others as well. Just a quick 5 minutes to allow Mr. Lake to get situated. I can get him a glass of water, and then we can make sure we have everything we need for the documents.
Sure, we'll pick up with Dr. Lake at 3:30.
Thank you.
Madam Court Reporter, are you back with us?
I'm here.
All right, we're good in the back, so let's go back on the record. It's Dr. Larry Lake, correct? Good afternoon, sir.
Correct.
Please raise your right hand. You swear and affirm the testimony you give here today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury.
I do.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Good afternoon, Dr. Lake.
Good afternoon.
I can hear you great, so that sounds good.
Okay.
If at any time during the course of this proceeding, Dr. Lake, you need to take a break, just let me know or let whoever's examining you know. And as long as I think a question's not pending, we can take a break. Okay, so just make sure to let us know. Okay. Dr. Lake, can you state your full name for the record, please?
Larry Wayne Lake,
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
University of Texas at Austin.
And in this case, are you also serving as a consultant?
Yes, Austin Consulting Petroleum Engineers.
Thank you. And have you previously testified before the New Mexico Oil Conservation Commission?
No,
Is your CV or resume attached to your self-affirmed direct statement that was filed with the commission?
I think we've added one more reference, but yes,
Got it. And your background experience, you're a reservoir engineer, correct?
yes,
And you have extensive experience working on CO2 and enhanced recovery. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay. So you're seeking to be qualified as an expert in reservoir engineering and CO2 enhanced recovery.
yes.
What were you asked to do in this case?
Well, two things. One was to sort of opine on the likelihood of success of the CO2 flood in the ROZ zone. And the second was to estimate to what extent the CO2 flood would be compromised by fluid passing from the water disposal wells.
Now, have you conducted a review of the information that Empire has made available regarding its proposed development in the San Andreas ROZ at the EMSU?
Yes.
What did you look at, just generally, what did you look at to come to your opinions, if you can recall?
Oh, there were several spreadsheets that had pressure information in it. One spreadsheet that came from public sources for rates, a lot of testimonies, and I think at least one, maybe two published publications, papers.
And you also had some discussions with Goodnight personnel, correct?
Yes,
And you also had some discussions with Netherlands Sewell, in particular, Dr. Jim Davidson.
indirectly.
Okay. And you stated that you reviewed some of the testimony of some of the witnesses, including Goodnight's witnesses in these cases.
I didn't understand that. Say that again.
Sure. You reviewed the testimony of the witnesses, including Goodnight's witnesses in these cases?
Yes,
Have you prepared written direct and rebuttal testimony in exhibits that are marked as exhibits G and G1 through G12 that provide your opinions and analyses?
yes,
Were the exhibits and figures included in your direct and rebuttal testimony prepared by you or compiled under your direction and supervision?
yes.
Do you have any corrections to the testimony figures or exhibits that were filed with the commission?
Not that I know of.
And do you adopt the testimony in your self-affirmed direct and rebuttal testimony that you filed with the commission that are marked as Exhibit G as your sworn testimony today? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hearing Officer, I would tender Dr. Lake as an expert witness in reservoir engineering and CO2 enhanced recovery.
Empire,
No objection from Empire.
OCD,
No objection.
Rice,
No objection.
Pilot,
No objection.
you'll be so recognized.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I'd also move the admission into evidence of Dr. Lake's direct testimony and rebuttal testimony marked as Exhibit G and attachments G1 through G12.
Any objection from Empire,
No objection.
OCD,
No objection.
Rice,
No objection.
Pilot,
No objection.
they'll be admitted.
Okay. Dr. Lake, have you been present, well, not present, but have you listened to some of the testimony and cross-examination that was provided by some of Empire's experts during this proceeding?
Yes,
Did you listen to Dr. Buckwalter's
I
testimony?
did most of it, yes.
Did you hear any other witness testimony that relates to this case, to the matters you're going to be addressing
Today,
today?
yeah.
And did you prepare a summary of slides reflecting your opinions, including any additional opinions based on what you learned from the testimony you heard?
Yes.
At this time, Mr. Hearing Officer and Mr. Dr. Lake, I would like to walk through your slides. Starting with this first one, you have some summary points. Walk us through what your summary is.
Yeah, I'm going to, first of all, I probably should apologize. This presentation is academic, a little more wonky, not wokey, wonky than some of the others I've heard. So if it seems like I'm talking too much or getting into too much of the weeds, please stop me. But, and Mr. Rankin is my slide advancer, so I'm going to say time to move forward. Okay, first conclusion is that the disposal San Andres and the Grayberry formations are largely separate, and that is based upon three observations. Next, the pressure behavior. The next observation is physical separation. Third one is the lost circulation. The next thing is that I think the simulation that we referred to just now had too much residual water in it, and means that there was water had to come from somewhere, and I think some of those somewhere is in the residual water saturation. Next. And finally, the recovery prediction is well outside the range of observed CO2 floods.
What does this next slide show?
Well, this is a diagram of something called a repeat formation tester on the left-hand side. It looks a lot better here than when I looked at it before. This is something that was invented back in the 1960s, and it's used to measure pressure at different points along a wellbore. The most recent manifestations of this, it also can take fluid samples, and it can take other attributes of the fluids being produced too. It basically is something that moves up and down the wellbore. I have to use my hands here, okay? Moves up and down the wellbore here, and periodically it punches a hole through the mud cake, and it samples pressure as a function of time and fluids if you need it. Now, pressure is the only thing we're going to talk about here. So, and it can be done in just a few minutes. So it can be done, moved up the wellbore, done, moved up the wellbore, and when you finish, you get a profile of pressure. So in fact, you get a time change of pressure, but I think we'll just talk about the spatial change of pressure here. And what is not shown on the right-hand side there is a picture of a typical pressure profile, and it works something like this. You start at the surface, and as you move down with a straight line, it's important it's a straight line, that indicates the density of the fluid. But if it passes through a zone that has no permeability or has no fluids, it goes kind of crazy for a while. And then it does it again if there's another zone that has the density of fluid, crazy again, and then another one. And you can tell what the identity of the fluids are, if you're lucky, from the slopes of the lines. But as important, if not more so, is you can tell which zones are potentially productive. It's pretty clever because you can run in a fairly short period of time. You can do a whole profile of pressures. Okay.
Next one.
The next one, yeah.
Okay. And you had a point here, I guess, Dr. Lake, that I wanted you just to touch on. Why is it important to understand this RFT tool here in the context of this case?
Well, it tells you which parts of the zone are permeable, which parts are fluids or not. And in particular, as you look at it as a whole, you get some idea of what parts of the wellbore are isolated from each other.
Okay, and why is it important to understand what's happening with the pressure in this case?
Well, pressure Pressure to me is the most definitive aspect of barriers. And so if you can see things in the pressure, that's barrier. Right?
What does this next slide show, and explain how it relates to
Yeah,
your
this one's going
discussions?
to take a little while. First of all, this is not my slide originally, so please, I'm not going to refer to any of the text on the right-hand side over there. On the left-hand side, just sort of a little background, fluid pressure is measured in PSI, or pounds per square inches. But as important as the pressure is the gradient or the slope of the line, pressure versus depth or distance, because that's proportional to the rate at which the fluid flows. And we've gotten so used to doing this that we report gradients in kind of odd units. It's instead of it being pounds per cubic feet or so, it's, as it says right there, the gradient for water is 0.46 psi per foot, and oil is 0.36, and so on and so forth. If I consider 2 horizontal points in the reservoir, a zero gradient indicates perfect communication between the two points. If I consider 2 points that are vertical, like a well bore, then the vertical gradient should be equal to the density of the fluid. It's actually the reciprocal density, but we'll go with that. And so if it is a zone that can flow fluids, should be a straight line. And so on the right-hand side over there, the vertical axis is pressure. The horizontal axis, I think I'd get that back. So the vertical axis is depth. The horizontal axis is pressure. And it goes up as you go deeper, which is what it should do, but it's not a straight line. It's not so I think that's pretty firm evidence that there is at least a partial, if not a total barrier in between the top and the bottom of that zone. So next.
Before I leave this, Dr.
Yeah.
Lake, just to be clear, when you're talking about not a straight line, you're referring to these points on the chart that have a black circle around them, correct?
Indeed, I would refer to them if I could point to them. But it's the points on the line there that determine the curve.
Okay, and I'm asking you this, Dr. Lake, only because there's going to be a written record, and I'll need to make sure the written record is clear about what you're specifying or referring to. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. Next slide.
So anyhow.
Yep.
So pressure behavior indicates little or no communication between the disposal unit and the Grayburg.
What does this next slide show? And explain
The next
how it
slide
relates?
is the second argument on the list of the first page there was physical separation. And the color codes are such that the green indicates well, first of all, the bars there indicate the top and the bottom of the completion intervals. Green indicates an IMSU producer, and red indicates a saltwater disposal unit. And the two figures, the one on the left and the one on the right, are the same thing. It's just they have different aspects of the completions. And you can see, with the exception of the one well that's sticking down there, right there, yes, they're all pretty separate of each other. So the second argument for them being isolated is just physical separation. Okay. The third one, and this one is basically a little more involved, but when wells are drilled, they are drilled with something called mud.
Excuse me. Empire has an objection to this slide and the next two slides. Dr. Lake provided no testimony regarding lost circulation or mud losses in his written statements. He filed a direct testimony. There's no mention of mud losses or circulation anywhere in his direct testimony. Likewise, he was deposed and there was no discussion of mud, of losses, or of circulation in his deposition. Finally, he also filed rebuttal testimony, and there again, no mention of mud, of losses, or circulation. It's unfair surprise and undue prejudice to Empire. We received these slides late on Tuesday. We had no idea that Dr. Lake would be testifying about mud losses or loss in circulation. There are other Goodnight witnesses who have testified about this, And we don't believe it is fair for Dr. Lake to all of a sudden be also testifying in that regard.
Mr. Rankin, Mr. Rankin.
Mr. Hearing Officer, Dr. Lake testified at length in both his direct and rebuttal testimony about the importance of pressures, about the difference in pressure regimes between these zones. And this is an example, it's a demonstrative of what he's talking about, how there's a demonstration of a difference in pressure regimes between the overlying zone and the zone in which Goodnight is disposing of. He's simply using it to demonstrate the other elements of his basis for his opinions.
Was this, the objection as to the exhibit, was this first provided to Empire only on Tuesday?
No, Mr. Hearing Officer, this exhibit was filed with Mr. McGuire's direct case in August of 2024. It was also, this information was also provided to Empire as part of the discovery in this case. I can't even tell you what date it was, but it was months earlier. This information is not new. In fact, as you saw just the other day, Mr. Hearing Officer, they put forward their own demonstrative showing the loss circulation across the entire EMSU. This is not a surprise. This is the core of the case. There's no surprise here. Dr. Lake has been discussing from the beginning of his testimony the importance of pressure.
Okay, but I think the objection goes to his testimony about mud losses.
I think Dr. Lake has been listened to different discussions from the hearing, and I think it's fair for him to opine on what he's learned based on the hearing.
Okay, Ms. Shaheen, I'll hear from you on those points.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Yes, Goodnight has other witnesses who have testified in this regard. Mr. McGuire is free to testify about these, but Dr. Lake, as I mentioned, has never once mentioned mud losses or circulation in any of his prior testimony. And I think it's cumulative, if not prejudicial, to Empire at this point to have Dr. Lake testify on a subject on which he's not disclosed any previous testimony.
So do you have any objection to him testifying about pressure as opposed to mud losses?
I am fine with him testifying about pressure because that is in his testimony, but he did not, again, testify about mud losses or circulation.
Are you okay with that? You're going to end up with a problem if Preston McGuire if he's actually going to testify about that, then you'll end up with cumulative objections with him.
This is part of Mr. McGuire's testimony. I guess I would ask, can Dr. Lake explain some of the bases for his opinion about differences in pressure?
Well, at your own risk.
I'm not sure what the hearing officer is referring to, I guess.
Well, what I mean is, Ms. Shaheen is saying you have another witness teed up to testify about the relationship apparently between mud losses and pressure differential. So if you ask this witness about that and then ask another witness about that, I may start sustaining cumulative objections.
Mr. Hearing Officer, I would point out that Good Empire had 11 witnesses, several of whom repeated over and over again about Mother Nature's water flood, how it started, where it went, the effect of Mother Nature's water flood. I made no objection to cumulative evidence.
Okay, you could have,
Yeah.
and all I'm telling you is they have the right to make that objection if you go there.
Well,
I'm going to allow it if you want to go there, and then we may end up in a problem with Preston McGuire.
Dr. Lake, I would just ask you, rather than go into detail about mud losses, the nature of the mud losses, how it occurred, where it occurred, any information specific about mud losses, but I think it's appropriate for you to testify about how the fact of mud losses in the EMSU has supported the basis for your opinion. Okay, so rather than getting into details about the specific exhibit here, I would just ask how, in general, your understanding of the fact that there were lost circulation underneath the EMSU and surrounding have informed your opinion.
Well, I think it's a pressure issue. So the mud's supposed to go down the well. It's supposed to come up the the outside of the tubing, and when it encounters a zone that is low pressure or a zone that's highly permeable, it has a tendency to lose, to basically flow into the formation and not back to the surface. It's called lost mud. So it is a pressure issue. And the fact that they lost, what is that, 22 bottom hole pressure started there, 4,295. Next slide.
So, Dr. Lake, rather than getting into too much detail about the mud losses to preserve any issues or avoid any further issues, I'll just ask you, I'll skip down through these next few slides and ask you to explain to me at a high level your basis for why, in your opinion, there's a pressure differential between the Grayburg and San Andres.
Go back one slide. So lost circulation indicates low pressure in the San Andres, and it indicates high perm. And in fact, I think there's other testimony that says how low the pressure differences are. By the way, pressure is an elusive little fella because there's so many different pressures around a reservoir, but this is speaking about the bottom hole pressure of circulating mud.
What's this next slide show? And if you would just explain to us what this next element of
this goes to the third bullet. I talked about too much water, and this one is the wonkiest slide here. On the left-hand side is something called a relative permeability curve. This is the one that came from a report by Cobb in, I think, the 1980s. Then on to the right, there's the same thing. These are the curves that were used in Dr. Buckwalter's simulation results. These things represent on the vertical axis the relative mobility or permeability of the indicated fluids. That is a dynamic measure. Across the horizontal axis is the water saturation. That is a static measure, and this is one of the things that we strive to do in petroleum engineering, is to relate dynamic and static measures. I'll refer to the one on the left, although both these are laboratory measurements. And there should be a bunch of little points around it, and they've been summarized with curves. But the curve that is decreasing from left to right is the oil relative permeability, and its most important feature is usually where that curve goes to zero. I think that's about 70%, isn't it?
Yes.
And then the other curve, the one that's increasing from right to left, is the water relative permeability, and that's about 20% or so. On the right-hand side, the same things that I've tried to indicate the water residual saturation. The residual saturation is where the relative permeability goes to zero. So I've got a blue area over here on the left-hand side of about 20%, and on the right-hand side, and honestly, I can't read that. Is that 35%?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Dr. Lake. Yeah,
Go back.
35%.
Yeah. So he starts off with a lot more water in the simulation than what probably should be there. And he needs this so that you can make up the water that he sees produced at the wellbore. So the claim is the modeling work starts with the residual water saturation that's too large. This is falling back on experience, but with the San Andres cores that I've seen in other places, residual water saturation is 15% or so, much smaller than either one of these. Okay, next. Okay, a little bit of background on CO2 enhanced soil recovery. This is by far, well, first of all, we inject CO2 in the reservoir. As the cartoon there says, there's a vertical well. Nearly all of the wells that have been done, CO2 flood, have been done through vertical wells. There are some horizontals. And it's producing fluids to the second vertical well on the right-hand side there. You inject the CO2 and it brings about chemical changes in the oil, and those chemical changes, and it's represented by that red-blue area there on the right-hand side, can cause oil that was previously immobile to be mobile, and that can cause a bank to form. This is the most common form of enhanced soil recovery in the Permian Basin. And with the exception of thermal EOR, this is the most successful form of enhanced soil recovery. Most operators inject it with water, and that's where the water alternating gas comes from. So they inject a little bit of CO2, a little bit of water, a little bit of CO2, and that's shown in the cartoon there on the right. That's alternating light blue and light green areas there. So the injecting the water increases the volume of the reservoir that is contacted, and there's a lot of papers that have support that. But it also reduces the amount of CO2 that's required. And so as long as it doesn't compromise the flood too much, it's a good thing to do because you save expenses that way too. Typically, the WAG ratio is about 2 barrels of water for every barrel of CO2 injected in there. And so that's CO2 enhanced soil recovery. Okay, next. Now, this has been around since the 1960s or 1970s. This is the paper that I'm showing you results from. There is a top in the middle. It's the title. This is 50 Years of Enhanced Soil Recovery. I should remember that. I was an author on that. And so it basically is a summary of the field experience. Oh, and I should say this to make sure I don't want to think of it now to make sure I don't forget it later on. These are all conventional CO2 floods. They are not floods in ROZs. And so the right upper figure shows on the vertical axis the CO2 recovered as a fraction of the hydrocarbon pore volume. And across the horizontal axis is the total water plus CO2 injected as a fraction of the hydrocarbon pore volume. The figure at the bottom is a figure that came from a paper that the testimony showed it was used in calculating CO2 recovery for a ROZ zone. And the one on the left, the one on the bottom basically is just a simulation, but the one on the upper right is actual data. We got a really good data set from a consulting company. And so we plotted them all up. If you can see the faint lines there, that's the behavior of the individual 20 some odd conventional CO2 floods that have been going on mostly in the Permian Basin, but occasionally outside of it. The dotted lines represented plus or minus 2 standard deviations of the average, which is red, and the solid lines represent plus or minus 1 standard deviation. A lot of spread, a lot of scatter. And so I note over here at the extreme right-hand side, where it's injected 4 pore volumes, the average recovery is about 11%. This is data. This is not just simulation. And if I move down to the middle plot over here, where they've injected 4 pore volumes, they're showing recoveries of about 18%, which is about twice as much as what the actual field did. And in fact, 18% is basically 2 standard deviations above the mean. And remind you again that these are conventional CO2 floods, and it is likely that ROZ floods would perform about a third as well as this. So it is my belief, and that's the next advance, is the oil recovery prediction is too optimistic. So that's the summary.
Thank you, Dr. Lake. I apologize, Dr. Lake. Thank you very much. Mr. Hearing Officer, before I release Dr. Lake for cross-examination, I just have a few more questions, Dr. Lake.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion about Empire's proposal to develop a potential RZ in the EMSU?
I don't think they'll make money.
How about the proposal to develop a potential RZ in the interval that Goodnight Midstream is disposing into?
I don't think they'll make money there either.
Is there any reason that you're aware of that would prevent Empire from collecting additional data itself on the potential for an ROZ in Goodnight Midstream's disposal zone at this time?
Expense would be the only reason.
In your experience, is 4 years enough time to acquire sufficient data to develop and plan to conduct an ROZ project?
Gosh, 4 years of data collection. Is that what you said?
Is 4 years enough time to collect data and develop a plan?
I think so, yeah.
What's your opinion about whether Goodnight's disposal injection is impairing Empire's EMSU operations?
Yeah, I'm skeptical. And what I go back to is a publication about 10 years ago by a fellow named Enoch at the University of Pittsburgh, who measured the CO2 oil phase behavior in the presence of fresh water and salt water. And there was no difference whatsoever. It's not a process that's considered to be sensitive to the salinity of the water.
What's your opinion about whether Empire's producing zone and Goodnight's disposal zone are in communication?
Well, we talked about that before. I don't think they're in communication.
And what's your opinion about whether Empire can develop a residual oil zone in the EMSU while Goodnight continues to dispose of produced water into its disposal zone?
I think they can.
Okay. Dr. Lake, based on your review, do you believe that there's enough data today to make a decision based on what you've reviewed?
I don't think so. There's sort of a lot of uncertainties, a lot of missing things. So no, I don't think so.
Okay. What additional data do you think needs to be obtained in order? And I guess the question is your opinion today is that there's enough information to know that there's not going to be impairment from Goodnight's injection, correct?
I think so, yes.
Okay. But the question is whether there's enough information, whether an ROZ could even work. Is that right?
Yeah, I think partly why I answered that is that I've done some looking up of historic ROZ developments. There's almost no data in the literature about this, but the recoveries are very low. So I don't see a reason why this would not be similarly low also.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Lake. At this time, Mr. Hearing Officer, I have no further questions of Dr. Lake and make him available for cross-examination.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rankin. Ms. Shaheen, Ms. Hardy, I'm guessing.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer. Good afternoon, Dr. Lake. We met virtually
Good
at your
afternoon
deposition.
again. Yeah.
Nice to see you. I understand from your CV that you've done some consulting work for Chevron and for Exxon. Is that correct?
Let me see. Chevron for sure. Exxon, yeah, a long time ago though.
In your opinion, do these companies perform good work?
In my opinion, yes.
And you'd agree with me then that Exxon wouldn't represent the existence of an ROZ in its sale package if they hadn't performed enough analysis or have enough evidence to support that representation. Is that right?
That's sort of the way they operate, but if it is, it is.
Can you tell us what you were asked to do for Goodnight in this matter?
To estimate what I thought the feasibility of a successful ROZ flood and to the extent to which the water disposal would compromise the CO2 flood.
You weren't asked to determine whether there's an impermeable barrier between the Grayburg and the San Andreas, were you?
I think so. We said no communication.
And so have you given us an opinion that there exists an impermeable barrier throughout?
I understand you. I'm sorry, I talked over you. Sorry.
Yeah, Doctor, just I know you can anticipate the full question.
Yeah, I understand.
For the sake of the court reporter and everybody's sanity, if you'll please wait for Ms. Shaheen and just think of it as a radio transmission where you don't have to say over. Thank you.
So a single barrier, probably no, but a collection of barriers. In fact, that one slide that I showed that had the pressure versus depth, I've been thinking about how one could actually back out sort of the density of the barriers or maybe the length of the barriers from that. So I think the pressure indication is definitely non-communication, probably not a single barrier.
Where you weren't asked to determine whether a residual oil zone exists in the San Andreas, were you?
I was not.
And you yourself did not conduct a study to evaluate whether a residual oil zone exists in the San Andreas, did you?
No.
In your direct testimony that was filed in August, on page 3, you speak of, quote, the large injection rate and small pressure increase. Do you recall that testimony?
I do.
When considering the small pressure increase, did you factor in the volumes of water that had been removed from the San Andres through the water supply wells for the water flood?
I've just looked at what the data said. And so I just had the injection volumes, which was in the millions of barrels, as I recall, and a very small pressure increase.
So this slide, you can take a minute to look at it, but what I understand it shows is the amount of water that was injected prior to, in the San Andres, prior to 1986, before the unit was formed. And then the green on the right shows the water that was withdrawn from the water supply wells during the water flood. And you can see there's a large dip there and kind of remains level for a while and then starts coming up fairly drastically there in the yellow part there since 2020 when Goodnight began its injection. Do you see that?
I do see that.
And so did you take into consideration this exchange of water, if you will, when you offered your opinion about the small pressure increase and the large injection rate?
I think that's a dotted line, which indicates it's an estimate.
Yes, after 2025 going forward,
Right.
that is a dotted line and that is projected.
Yeah.
But up through the yellow is actual water withdrawals and up until 2024.
Yeah, I'm very, very fuzzy on where this slide comes from or what this slide means. I just remember the spreadsheets that were in the testimony that showed very small pressure changes.
This is from the OCD website, data from the OCD website, and our rebuttal exhibit B47. Are you aware that the injected water has effectively replaced most, if not all, of the previously removed water?
If you say so. I don't know. I didn't calculate those volumes.
You didn't review that data and compare
I
it.
just misread it. I didn't put one versus the other.
Wouldn't you expect that the pressure will increase at a greater rate now, given that any future withdrawal of water will be much less than Goodnight's proposed injected volumes?
It's a bit of a mystery because even without the withdrawal, well, let me say it right. There's some holes out there that's taking a lot of water, which means that you could probably pull a lot of water through there. And so I guess I forgot what the question was. So
The question is, wouldn't you expect that the pressure will increase at a greater rate now, given that any future withdrawal of water will be much less than Goodnight's injected volumes?
in the normal case, yes, but not in this case. It's amazing. It injects with basically no pressure difference.
Have you seen the fluid level data that Goodnight recently provided to Empire?
Have I seen that? I don't recall that I've seen that.
On the right here, you see this chart, somewhat of a spreadsheet. This data was provided to us about a week ago, fluid level data from Goodnight's injection wells. And over to the left is a graphic representation of that fluid level data.
The vertical axis is pressure.
The vertical axis is fluid level from the
Which is-
surface.
Okay, which is a surrogate for pressure.
You agree that the fluid levels are rising in every well across the formation, except for the Piper 2, which we understand has been shut in. Do you agree?
Not every well. And furthermore, I don't know what the uncertainty of these measurements are. It looks pretty constant to me.
You're looking at, it looks to me, and correct me if you see this differently, but I see at the bottom there, the dark blue line and the green line, and they progressively go up, level out a little bit, then they go up even more, and then they level out a little bit. But from February of 2022 to almost May of 2025, you wouldn't agree with me that those fluid levels have gone up?
I'm looking at 1020. Specifically, your question was over that time interval, right?
I'm sorry.
Your question was over the time interval?
Yes.
Yeah, it's gone up, but then it flattens out there at about 1023. That's 4 years.
You would agree that rising fluid levels indicate that pressures are rising?
I agree.
And you agree that pressure will continue to rise with the injection of large volumes of water, correct?
Oh, yeah.
I think you've viewed a number of variations of this slide, including your own, that reflects the repeat formation test pressure data. You're aware that this RFT repeat formation test performed in 1986 was before the water flood, right?
Okay. I didn't know that.
And it was before any water supply well withdrawals as well. Are you aware of that?
Nope.
Is it your opinion that these pressures do not support the conclusion that there's communication between the San Andres and the Grayburg?
Well, I think it does support the conclusion, but what it does not support is a single isolated barrier. So there's baffles or something there. There's something that's prohibiting movement.
And you understand that as represented here in Empire slide 3, Empire applied a 0.43 gradient PSI per foot to calculate the San Andres pressure. You understand that?
Oh, that's common.
And you understand that the blue line on the right side of this slide, right here, where my cursor, I'm going to try to put my cursor. There it is. That this blue line represents that calculation.
Yeah.
And that pressure was calculated to be 1,527 PSI in the San Andres. See, right. Find my cursor here. Right here.
What was the question?
The question is, you understand that they used that gradient to calculate San Andres pressure, original San Andres pressure at 1,527 PSI?
Yeah, I understand your question now. It depends on where that line started. I mean, the gradient is correct, but I don't know where the line started. You could shift that blue line to the left quite a bit and still what am I trying to say here? And still honor the gradient, because it's the slope of the line, not the pressure itself.
Okay, but you agree that the pressure was calculated to be 1,527 PSI in the San Andres?
I agree that somebody calculated that, yes.
And you would agree that 0.43 is a reasonable gradient for a normally pressured reservoir, right?
Correct.
And looking at your exhibit G4, I'll pull it up if we need to, but there you've actually used 0.46 PSI per foot as the gradient. Is that right?
I think I didn't. Could you go back to that?
Sure.
Yes. That gradient depends on water salinity. And so it depends, these are fairly saline, and so it's usually 0.433 to about 0.465. But I didn't use that for any calculation. It's just there for illustration.
But you agree, my understanding is you've recommended that 0.46 PSI per foot would be a reasonable gradient to use here. Is that right?
To who do I recommend it? I don't understand the question.
On your slide here, you're representing that the water gradient should be 0.46 PSI per foot. Is that right?
That's salt water, yes.
And you agree that this gradient will give you a higher pressure than 1,527 PSI that was calculated by Empire?
If it were a straight line, yeah.
So you agree that the San Andres is under pressure, correct?
I do.
How do you explain the lower pressure reading using your gradient?
I don't explain it at all. It's a geologic factor.
On page 4 in paragraph 8 of your direct testimony, you opine that significant pressure differences between the San Andres and the Grayburg, quote, are conclusive evidence of lack of communication. Do you recall that testimony?
I think so.
You didn't do any calculations on the pressure differences, right?
No.
You rely on Preston McGuire, is that right?
Yes.
On page 5, paragraph 9 of your direct testimony, you opine that the San Andres, quote, used by Goodnight Midstream is separated from the Grayburg Formation by at least 200 feet, which includes impermeable zones and anhydrite layers. Do you recall that testimony?
I think so. That was a lot, though.
You yourself did not perform any analysis or study to come to
No.
this opinion, did you?
Because I think I would explain my reasoning a little from the other direction. I know that.
Excuse me, if you would just answer my question, that would
Okay,
be
do it again.
appreciated. Did you make any effort to determine the location of this purported impermeable barrier?
Did not.
Am I correct in understanding that you relied on Goodnight witness Preston McGuire for this opinion?
Yes.
On page 5, paragraph 11 of your direct testimony, you referred to the quote, low concentration of oil in the San Andres. Do you recall?
I think so.
You yourself did not perform a study on the concentration of oil in the San Andres, correct?
No.
Am I correct that you relied on Dr. Davidson's testimony to support your opinion here?
I relied on the testimony. I'm sorry, I did it again. I'm sorry. I relied on the published logs, the material that was I reviewed.
And you reviewed logs?
Didn't review logs. I reviewed the published logs, the reports of that.
And which reports did you review?
It may have been Davidson's.
Are you aware that Dr. Davidson testified he saw oil saturations all the way down to the bottom of the San Andres?
Objection to mischaracterization of Dr. Davis's testimony.
Did you listen to Dr. Davidson's testimony in the hearing this week?
I did not.
On page 9, paragraph 20 of your direct testimony, you opine that the San Andres is likely fractured and or heavily karsted, correct?
Yes.
What is the basis for your opinion?
Well, carbonate reservoirs, this is a carbonate, calcium carbonate, tend to be fractured because they tend to be a lot more brittle. And a little bit of stress will cause there to be a crack.
Did you perform a study here? I'm sorry.
Objection. He's in the middle of answering a question.
My apologies.
I'm losing track of this, guys. Tell me, what was the deal? Oh, finish answering the question. Also, carbonates are kind of reactive to water, so they have a tendency for water to leach out portions of it. It's pretty obvious in some places, and in locations where carbonate by itself would be almost impermeable, the connection of those the karsts and the connection of the karsts can lead to a pretty high permeability medium.
Did you perform a study in this regard?
No.
Have you reviewed Dr. Lindsay's fracture study?
I have.
Wouldn't these fractures, these karsts, include vertical fractures?
I don't remember it that well.
Well, just generally speaking, you opined on karsts and heavy fractures in the San Andres, right?
Yeah.
And so my question is, wouldn't these fractures include vertical fractures?
If I think about this, fractures at depth are usually vertical, so yes.
If there are fractures and karsting throughout the San Andres, how can the San Andres have a barrier in it that exists throughout the EMSU?
That's geology. I don't know.
Couldn't you conclude that there's communication between the San Andres and the Grayburg because of the large injection rate and small pressure increase?
Let's see. You mean small pressure? I'm having trouble visualizing that. A small pressure increase and a large injection rate?
Yes.
And so your picture is that everything is bleeding through to the Grayburg?
I'm just asking hypothetically, couldn't you conclude that there is communication between those two formations
Yeah,
based on the large
Yes.
injection rate?
okay.
Have you reviewed water production data for the Grayberg wells?
No, I have not.
Have you seen this graphic depiction of oil and water production data available from the Oil Conservation Division?
I have not.
And you'll see here, there are large bubbles and there are smaller bubbles. And the blue here indicates the cumulative water production to date.
Mhm.
And the green indicates the cumulative oil to date. If there's no communication between the Grayberg and the San Andres, how do you account for the ratio of oil and water production evident here?
Well, one of the ways to account for it is the fact that he put in his simulation, he put in a lot of extra water. But another way to account for it is I think there's aquifers on maybe both sides of this reservoir.
If it's edge water, why don't the wells in the middle here
Yeah,
have high water production?
don't they?
These smaller, I'm trying to find my cursor here. These smaller circles here have more oil production and less water. See, you can see
But-
here. So my
Yeah.
question is,
Okay.
if it's edge water coming from either side, why don't these wells in the middle have high water production?
I'm not sure I understand your question because edge water means it's coming from the side. And most of the big blue dots are from the side over there. So that's where the water is coming from off to the left side.
Well, would that explain this big bubble right here?
Which big bubble right there? No, it's an anomaly. It's not characteristic of the rest of it.
Okay, but you're saying that edge water is coming from this direction?
No, to the left.
You're saying edge water is coming from this direction?
Yeah.
Have you performed a study in
I
that
have not,
regard?
no. I'm just going by.
Doctor, again, please wait for
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Ms. Shaheen to
Sorry.
finish her question. Thank
Sure.
you.
This, I believe, is your exhibit G3. One more question going back to the bubble map. Are you aware that the reservoir, the Grayberg Reservoir pinches out to the east?
I was not aware of that, no.
And I believe this is your exhibit G3. Do you recognize this exhibit?
That's a version of that exhibit. There are actually more on that exhibit than what's here.
This is the first page of it. Is that correct?
First page of what?
Of your exhibit G3.
Oh, you're talking about the original document.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
you
I thought
can
you were
see-
talking about my presentation. Yeah, okay.
Okay. And you didn't create this exhibit, did you, Dr. Lake?
I know.
Who created it?
My colleague at Austin Consulting Petroleum Engineers.
In your deposition, you stated that you got, quote, tops in the bottom of the reservoirs from well data obtained from the subscription service IHS. Do you recall that testimony?
I believe so.
And that's what information you used for Exhibit G3, is that right?
Yes.
On page 5 in paragraph 11 of your direct testimony, you rely on NSAI's, that's Netherlands Sewell, I believe, on its analysis that, quote, Empire's target San Andres ROZ below negative 700 feet total vertical depth subsea is in an aquifer with only scattered saturation above 20%. Do you recall that testimony?
That's in the Netherlands Sewer report.
Yes. What witness from a Netherlands Sewell did you rely on?
I don't remember that.
Did you yourself conduct any study in this regard?
No,
Did you verify Netherlands Sewell's opinions in this regard?
no.
Have you reviewed the cores from the EMSU 679 and the RR Bell number 4 to determine oil saturation?
No.
Turning now to your rebuttal testimony. On page 3 of your rebuttal, you critique Mr. West's use of dimensionless curves from a 2009 SPE paper. Is that right?
Could you show it to me?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Well, oh, you want me to show you your rebuttal?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that up.
Don't show me that.
I'm sorry. Don't show you yourself. Okay, this is your rebuttal testimony. Page 3. I think it's this first full bullet here.
Yes.
Do you see that?
I see it.
So there, you appear to complain that the dimensionless curves are not appropriate to use with respect to the EMSU because the curves relate to Wyoming and to determining CO2 demand and not oil recovery. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
Is this the paper that you're relying on?
Let me see. Yes.
And it's entitled Estimates of Potential CO2 Demand for CO2 EOR in Wyoming Basins, correct?
Yes.
Copyright 2009 SPE 122921. And here in this first highlighted place, I have highlighted ExxonMobil operates one of the world's largest CO2 producing fields at the LaBarge anticline in southwestern Wyoming. 5 Wyoming fields are currently under CO2 flooding using the CO2 supplied by a CO2 pipeline network that originates at ExxonMobil's gas plant at Chute Creek. Do you see that?
Yes.
And I believe you testified earlier that you believe Exxon knows what it's doing. Is that right? Here, the second highlighted part. Can you see it? Should I make it bigger? Make it a little bigger here.
I can't.
Is that helpful?
Where it says the purpose of this study is twofold. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
First, to screen for Wyoming oil reservoirs that are technically suitable for CO2 flooding. And second, to provide a method that quickly estimates the potential CO2 demand for CO2 EOR candidate reservoirs. The resulting database and CO2 demand estimation should be used for CO2 suppliers to foresee the market volume for CO2 EOR in Wyoming basins, correct?
Yes.
Moving on. And then it says the primary objective of CO2 EOR is to remobilize and dramatically reduce the post-water flooding residual oil saturation in reservoir pore space, correct?
Yes.
You can skip that one. And then here it starts talking about the dimensionless curve.
Mhm.
The dimensionless curve obtained from the CO2 WAG flood in the Tin Sleep Reservoir of Lost Soldier is shown in Figure 4 and is compared with the typical dimensionless curve from the CO2 WAG floods in the San Andres reservoirs of West Texas. Do you see that?
I do.
And so here they've actually compared not only the Wyoming dimensionless curve, but also a dimensionless curve from the San Andres reservoirs in West Texas. Is that right?
Yes.
And then this following sentence, for similar type of reservoirs using a same CO2 flood scheme, the dimensionless curve method could provide a quick assessment of potential oil recovery, as well as required CO2 injection volume. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And then here again, in this highlighted section, it again talks about CO2 floods in the San Andres reservoirs of West Texas, correct?
Yes.
And then finally, there's a figure. Let me see how far down it is. Thank you for your patience. I should have made a note of which. Here we go. Here we have a figure that indicates both the dimensionless curve from Wyoming as well as the dimensionless curve from the San Andres Formation in West Texas, correct?
Correct.
And in the same rebuttal testimony, you complain that the source of the dimensionless curve for the San Andres and the SPE paper is unknown. Do you not?
I'm sorry, say that again.
You complain that the source of the dimensionless curve for the San Andres and the SPE paper is unknown. Do you recall that?
I do not recall that.
Let's see. Should I go back? Do you want me to go back to your rebuttal?
Sure. Okay.
And do a quick search for curve here. Okay, well, I won't waste our time here, but I will show you the source of that dimensionless curve here in my PowerPoint. Here it is. Are you aware that that dimensionless curve came from the Kinder Morgan screening tool?
No, I did not know that.
In your slide 8 and in your testimony, you opine that Dr. Buckwalter's modeling work starts with residual water saturation that is too large, don't you?
Yes.
What fields did you look at to come to this opinion?
Oh, gosh. Sac Rock, Wasson, whatever, Seminole. All those are conventional CO2 floods.
Did you hear Mr. Knight's testimony yesterday?
I did not.
He testified that none of the other ROZ fields are analogous to the EMSU. Do you agree with Mr. Knight's?
I don't know whether to agree or not. It's such an early stage of development with ROZ reservoirs. I would guess that he's probably right.
With respect to residual water saturation, did you look at the literature relating to the EMSU in this regard?
I did once, yes, but I don't recall.
Have you reviewed the EMSU working interest owner meeting minutes from 1990?
No.
Here, this indicates at the bottom here in the red box that initial water saturation was 30%. Would you agree that Dr. Buckwalter's number is much closer to the applicable literature?
For a residual water saturation in a Permian carbonate? No, I don't think so.
You don't agree that Dr. Buckwalter's use of 35% is closer to the 30% that's identified here than your estimation of 15%?
Yeah, all I can say is what I've seen, so
And you haven't seen this before?
no.
Just a few questions relating to the testimony about mud losses. Have you ever seen mud losses used to predict tops of formations?
No, I haven't. That's what made it interesting.
Did you review all of the drilling reports in all wells that penetrate the Grayburg and the San Andres to identify the locations of any and all mud losses?
Did you say all of the wells?
Yes.
No.
Are you aware of any literature that discusses the use of mud losses to identify barriers between formations?
No.
When you have losses, do you know without a doubt what zone is taking the losses?
I think I'm going to have to ask you to explain that one. Do you mean the name of the zone or the location or what?
I'd say the location.
Yeah,
For example, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Go.
For example, could it be a shallow zone?
Oh, I see what you're asking. If it were a shallow zone, it would have shown mud losses a little bit higher up in the formation.
You really don't know with 100% certainty what zone is taking fluid, do you?
How to answer that? I know where it's going in because I know when the mud is lost and I know what the depth of the penetration is. So yeah, you do.
Are you assuming that the zone that is taking fluid is the penetrated zone?
Yes.
Could it be the lowest pressure zones in the well that is the upper Grayburg?
It would lose fluid there. Maybe I don't understand your question.
Could I have 5 minutes to confer with my client? I think I might be done.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Lake.
Are we finished?
Sure.
Let's come
Oh,
back
we're
at
good.
4:41.
Oh, I understand. I don't need a break. We are done. I passed the witness. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, Madam Court Reporter, false alarm.
I'm here.
All right, thank you.
Forgot about that. Most important people here.
All right, Mr. Moander, cross-examination of Dr. Lake.
No questions for Dr. Lake. Thank you for coming today, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Mr. Beck, cross-examination for Rice Operating.
No questions.
And Mr. Suazo, cross-examination for Pilot Water Solutions.
No questions for Dr. Lake from Pilot.
All right, then this time we'll start with Dr. Ampoma.
Thank you, Professor Lake, for being here today. I do have a couple of questions for you, and I will really make it really, really simple. Hopefully, I'll be done before 5. So you made mention in your testimony that you believe that there exists an anhydrite, there exist impermeable layers within the San Andres. Do you based on all the testimonies that you've listened to, especially Mr. Knight and then also Dr. Davidson's testimony, do you believe that this statement has been well established, to the commission?
Okay. I go by the pressures. To me, the pressures are definitive. And so I think based upon pressures, yeah, I think it's been well established.
So when Mr. Knight was presenting to the commission, he showed us the core data from one of the wells, which is EMSU 679, and he tried to relate his low PAM to some of the numbers that was in that report, specifically on the vertical permeability. From your experience, which I know you do have, do you believe that, let's say, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, less than 0.1 millidarcy can be established as a barrier zone?
Sure. Yes.
Now, you talked about in your testimony, there are casts, which could be fractures within the San Andreas. Now, don't you believe that that more or less aligns with Empire's assertion that there could be a potential communication, especially now you're talking about these casts and then the fractures, could be a potential conduit for fluid movement?
It could be.
So if Dr. Backwater utilized that assumption in his model, and you went back and forth with Ms. Shaheen on that one, do you believe that that assumption that he used in his model, and knowing for sure that we do have cast, we do have potential fractures, that could be an option in a modeling for modeling purposes? Do you believe that?
It could be, yes.
Let's discuss a little bit about the pressure. So based on all the information that you've reviewed, most experts from Goodnight side is saying that the San Andreas is under pressured reservoir. Do you believe that?
Yes.
And don't you believe that that reduction in the pressure also attributed to the water withdrawals, the water supply wells within the San Andreas?
I thought about that too. You're saying, I'm going to restate your question to make sure I understand it, that the reduction in the pressure was because of the water supply wells for the water flood, the upper water flood. I don't think the volumes go around on that. I don't think there's enough of that to do it.
No, I was saying that that could have contributed to that reduction.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Now, so that pressure measurement that you went back and forth with Ms. Shaheen on, within the San Andreas, where the pressure was, they estimated the pressure based on the hydrostatic gradient, which is about 1547 PSI, and that was reduced to about 1200 PSI. Based on your experience, is there any way this could happen, assuming it is a hydrostatic pressure system?
Can you say it again? I'm not sure I understood you.
Okay. So looking at those pressure differences, if you use hydrostatic, you're looking at about 1500 PSI.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the data, it has reduced to about, let's say, 1200 PSI. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking you, assuming there is no communication between the San Andreas and then the Greenberg, is there any petroleum engineering principle that you know that could have contributed to that reduction in pressure, still assuming we are in hydrostatic regime?
I still don't quite understand the question because if you're, keep going.
Okay. So assuming that we are in hydrostatic regime,
okay,
pressure regime, and instead of recording 1500 PSI, we are recording 1200 PSI. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking you, based on your experience, is there any principle that could have allowed that to happen, assuming also that there is no communication between both formation?
Boy, I still don't quite understand it, but I'll give it a shot. Okay. The going from gradients to pressures implies that you know where to start the line. And sometimes people start the line well down in the below the surface, so that the actual gradient from the surface down to the point in question is going to be around 0.36 or something like that. But the gradient, the hydrostatic gradient, will be more like 0.433. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Can we bring up slide number 3 from your presentation?
One moment, Dr. Mpoma, I'll have it in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Empoma, don't feel pressured to finish by 5. This witness will be back tomorrow morning, I expect, so take your time, all right?
No, I think we should be good. Slide number 3. So, Professor Lake, as I call you, and I know you are, so, on this particular slide, so we're looking at the RFT measurements within the Greenberg.
Mhm.
Now, and I appreciated your explanation on this. Don't you believe that these pressure changes, even though they are not aligned with the gradient, could also be due to production history
Production history from
from the Greenberg?
the Graybird?
Yeah. The oil, gas, water production.
I don't either the answer is no, or I don't understand your question. So one or the other. I don't know.
So you were saying that this profile that you're looking at establishes some kind of a barrier.
Yeah, I'm going by the gradient, by the fact that it's not a straight line. In fact, so it's I'm running out of words here, but if there's good communication, it should be a straight line.
So, and I'm asking you that could the different levels of production recovery from several layers, would that not contribute to this type of behavior?
Aren't those above this plot here?
Yeah, right there on this plot.
They're what?
So you see those blue showing the pressure.
Yeah.
So you are attributing, when you look at this, you are interpreting this one.
I do see. Yeah, it could be the production. Yeah.
So if it could be, did you include that in your analysis,
Did not.
in your conclusion, to say that it is due to a barrier?
No, did not.
So that could be an uncertainty in your analysis then.
It could.
Thank you. Let's go to slide number 4. Slide number 4, please. So, Dr. Lake, we've heard about, is this slide number 4? Okay. We've heard about from Goodnight's experts that, specifically Mr. Knight, that lost circulation can be attributed to an impermeable barrier or something like that. I mean, based on your experience, do you agree to that?
I think they think that's backwards. Lost circulation is just entering into a low pressure zone, and the fluids go into that zone rather than back up the wellbore. So I think it's indicating a change of something.
Well, that was what I was thinking. Like, if we are losing fluid, how does it become a barrier? But I think you are clarifying that, saying that there is something.
There's something, right?
But not necessarily that it is a barrier.
I think the pressure data speak to that.
Okay. On slide number 8. Professor Lake, so you're criticizing Dr. Bakwater's model specifically on the relative PAM. Now, my question to you is, do you know for certain that this was the final relative PAM after his history matching?
Do I know if the ones on the right are the final relative term after history matching?
Yes.
Oh gosh, I guess I don't know that. I just assumed he used them.
I did not get your response.
I don't know that. I thought they were the final relative terms after history matching. I didn't know that there was any other.
But I thought I heard from Goodnight's expert that he provided input data. So are you certain or you are not certain whether these were the final curves after his history matching of the oil in place?
No, I'm not certain of that.
So then it's possible that he could have probably changed these endpoints as part of his history matching effort. Would that be a fair statement?
It's more than possible. It's likely.
So on slide number 10, you discuss, you're criticizing Mr. West economic model, the CO2 economics model. So I don't need to ask, but I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the Kinder Morgan CO2 screen tool.
No, I didn't. The first I heard of it was just now.
Now I'm talking to Professor Lake. Okay. Okay. Don't you believe that his analysis, Mr. West's analysis, is the first part in terms of the scoping process that we normally do when we are evaluating a field for a potential CO2 UR project?
Yes.
So then let me go back to I'm going back to your direct testimony, page 6, item number 12, and I'll read. Hopefully, you will get that. You're saying that without detailed reservoir engineering and economic analysis, Empire cannot plausibly claim that a viable ROZ project, which would require an investment, blah, blah, blah. Please, do you get that?
Yeah.
So don't you believe that Empire should be given the opportunity without any restriction for them to fully do the detailed engineering and then also the economic analysis to tell the commission if their project could be viable or not?
I think so.
Dr. Lake, in your testimony, I've seen that you flagged that Empire is alleging that there is an ROZ, and I'm trying to look for one of them. So on page 4, on item 7, and I'll read portion of that. You presented in your exhibit G2 saying it's a base map of the Eunice Monument South unit. And on the next line, you said, Empire alleges that a large target of oil exists in the claimed residual oil zone, ROZ, in the San Andreas, below the historical producing, that would be the Greenberg. Is that your statement?
Can you show that to me on the screen?
Is that from the direct testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, one moment. Dr. Ampoma, while I'm pulling it up, will you remind me what page or
Yeah, that would be on page 4, number 7.
would you mind reading to me number 7? Okay.
Yeah, Goodnight, Elizabeth, G2. So that will be under initial response to Empire's claim San Andreas ROZ zone. Right there. Thank you. So the second line, Empire alleges that a large target of oil exist in the claim ROZ.
Okay.
So based on all the testimony that we've listened to, we are in 3rd week now. Dr. Davidson, who did the petrophysical analysis, he acknowledged that there is or could be an ROZ in the upper San Andreas as he defined it. So from Empire's, from Goodnight's experts, they are acknowledging that. Would you still stand by your statement that there is no ROZ?
Actually, the existence of this upper part of the San Andreas was new to me. And so I probably would modify the statement and qualify that.
So we listened to the experts from Goodnight. Mr. Knight made a statement about the description of the San Andreas is not well known. And this will probably support what you are saying right now, Now, if the description of the San Andreas is not well known by Goodnight experts, and there has not been a well-established boundaries that has been shown to the commission. We've seen some anhydrites. We've seen some pen barriers. As of now, if you don't have a full understanding of the description of the San Andreas, why should the commission really acknowledge the opinions from Goodnight saying that there's no potential issue with the injection on the production that is going on in the Greenberg, or let's say even there is any ROZ existence? I don't know if you can comment on that.
I kind of lost track of it. I could shorten it a little bit and try it again.
Yeah, so the short part of it is that Goodnight's expert, Mr. Knight, was saying that the San Andreas is not fully characterized.
It's not really what?
Fully characterized.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
based on your statement, you said that even you got to know about the Upper San Andreas, even based on the discussions we having.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking if Goodnight's experts are telling us they don't really fully understand the geology in the San Andreas, how convincing, is your argument that the anhydrite and let's say the barriers actually really exist?
It's I get your question now. So it's sort of like a lateral reasoning that this karstine infraction exists in other carbonate reservoirs, in fact, in other San Andreas reservoirs. And so, barring any reason for it not to be true in this one, why not? Why would it not exist?
Dr. Lake, thanks so much for being here. Do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lampkin?
I do have just a couple questions for you, Dr. Lake.
Sure.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there best practices when performing an RFT?
Yes, there certainly are. Right.
Do you know if those were carried out in the implementation of the RFT that everyone's basing their opinions on?
I'm only guessing. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Rosatos, questions for Dr. Lake?
I do not. Thank you for your time, Doctor.
Thank you.
All right. I'm assuming then that you have a redirect examination, Mr. Rankin, then you'd probably prefer to carry it to begin it tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm not reading your mind, in other words.
I'm sorry. Did you not hear me? I know I said yes, sir. Tomorrow morning, I think we're good to resume.
Okay. All right. It seems like a logical place to stop. Are you in agreement, Chairman Rosatos?
I am, just as a reminder to everybody that tomorrow we do need to end before 3 p.m. To accommodate Dr. Mpomas. So 3 p.m., please.
Okay. Thank you all. And we'll be off the record for today and back tomorrow at 9 o'clock.